Just tape. Good evening, everyone, and I want to welcome you all to the Cardinal News Candidate Forum for House District 41. I want to thank the Republican and incumbent Chris Obenshain and Democratic candidate Lily Franklin for agreeing to come here tonight. Our independent moderator, Jeff Vick, he'll be running the show here. We have a lot of questions to ask, and some of them have been submitted by all of you. We'd also like to thank the Blacksburg Library for hosting this forum, and all of you for coming tonight. So just a word about Cardinal News, because you have to sit through a little bit of an infomercial. We're an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit news organization, and we rely on the community for our support, so that means all of you. And we'd love for you to join our membership program. So we publish several newsletters, a daily newsletter, weekly, one that Dwayne writes on politics, weather that Kevin Myatt does, and entertainment. So we welcome you to sign up and try all of those as well. This series tonight, the candidate forums, are part of our Cardinal Way Civility Rules project, and so you notice the word civilities in that. We had a candidate forum a couple of weeks ago where members of the audience weren't very civil at times, and so we're hoping that all of you will listen to what the candidates have to say. The moderator, Jeff Vick, will give one warning if anyone's out of line, and if there's a second incident, we're going to quit. We're going to just close it down. We're also live streaming this on our Facebook page, and it'll be archived on YouTube, so that's another reason you don't want to be that person, right? So I am really looking forward to this forum tonight, because this district is always one of the most exciting to watch, because you just never know what's going to happen on Election Day. So thank you. And I'm going to turn this over to our executive editor, Jeff Schwanner, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the forum tonight.
Infomercial Part 2. So my name is Jeff Schwanner. I'm the executive editor of Cardinal News, and I want to thank everyone who's gathered here tonight, including the House District 41 candidates, our moderator, and you, the public, those here as well as those watching the live stream of this forum, and those who will view it later to help inform their vote. Both candidates have filled out our questionnaire for the voter guide, but tonight we have a special opportunity to hear them speak directly to you. And most of the questions that the candidates will answer tonight came from members of the audience, and I thank you for that. So I'd like to introduce our candidates for House District 41, the challenger, Democrat Lily Franklin, and the incumbent delegate, Republican Chris Obenshain. And our moderator is Jeffrey Vick. Mr. Vick is an adjunct professor of political science at Roanoke College. A retired Foreign Service officer and former Army officer, Mr. Vick has recently settled in the Roanoke Valley after 35 years of service in 10 countries and Washington, D.C. Now, Candidate Forum is not a debate. It's an opportunity for these fellow citizens to introduce themselves to you in a way they hope you'll remember positively when you cast your vote. I would bet that you'll all walk away tonight knowing something about each candidate that you otherwise wouldn't. And now please welcome our moderator, Mr. Vick.
Thank you very much, Blacksburg. Really appreciate your attendance here. As I tell my students at Roanoke College, these town halls, these civil discussions are really at the root of democracy, right? We want to hear from our candidates. We want to hear what they have to say. That forms the linkage between you and the houses that they represent, in this case, the House of Delegates in Richmond. So thank you very much for your questions. The way this is going to work is that we're going to do a series of 8 questions, and we're going to start with the challenger. She'll have 2 minutes to speak and answer to the question, then we'll move to the incumbent. and he'll have 2 minutes to answer the question. We will move on, and then after the halfway point, we'll reverse the order, and the incumbent will get to start with the answer of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th question. Okay, public math. So sorry about that. We got a math teacher up here. Maybe I didn't get that right, but it'll be half and half. Everybody will get a fair share to both open and to finish the answers to the questions. So when we get to about 30 seconds remaining in time, I'm going to sort of step forward and give them the high sign and let them know that their time is about to run out. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with Ms. Franklin. And first thing I have to do is get my timer set up here. Timer will chime, but I'll also give you the high sign. Okay, so Ms. Franklin, what would you like voters to know about in this campaign?
Yeah, thank you all for hosting this, and I just wanted to make sure that we don't get a chance often to really have these kinds of conversations, and so I just want to echo what Jeff said, that we do want to be respectful. You know, Chris and I are not going to agree on things, or we wouldn't be both running for this seat. So it's good to listen and hear what the other person has to say. And in the moment that we're in right now with so much political unrest and violence, we really need to make sure that our leaders are toning down the conversation and turning down the heat. So I appreciate you all coming out here. If we haven't met yet, my name's Lily Franklin, and I'm running to represent the 41st District. I am from Southwest Virginia. I grew up in a working class family. I have family from 2 to 92. I started my career as a high school teacher, and then I went on to be chief of staff in the House of Delegates. Growing up, I never imagined that I would be here. I often worked 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. I watched my families and neighbors all struggle to make ends meet, and I saw that they looked out for each other. When times got tough, they fought for each other, and that's what I'm doing, and that's why I decided to step up. Because I love my home, and I want to make sure that someone's fighting for it the way that it needs to be fought for. I deeply care about this region. As Jeff said, I'm the challenger. I ran last time, and I lost by 183 votes. At the time, it was one of the closest races in the states. But in both campaigns, this one and the last one, I focused on making sure that people felt a little less alone and a lot more heard. I stood on thousands of front porches talking to people, listening to their stories, and making sure that they know that when they vote for me, they're going to send somebody to Richmond who's going to fight for them, make sure that we bring good paying jobs back here, make sure that people have access to health care, that moms and dads don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs, that they can tuck their kids in at night, and our seniors aren't choosing between gas, groceries, or the electric bills. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you all tonight, and I will pass it over to Delegate Obenshain.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Obenshain, the same question.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Cardinal News, for hosting this forum. Thank you from the Montgomery County Regional Library for hosting this as well. It's great to be with you all tonight. I'm Chris Obenshain. I'm proud to represent the 41st House District. You know, this is my home. This is the area of Virginia that I grew up in. My family's been in Montgomery County for almost 100 years. My grandfather was a professor here at Virginia Tech. My dad grew up here in Blacksburg. I was able to grow up in Roanoke County, and Blacksburg has been my home and my wife's home for a number of years now as we've raised our family here. So this is our community. We care deeply about this region and this community, and that's why I ran for the House of Delegates, to be a voice for the 41st District, to be a voice for people in this part of Virginia, because so often our voices get drowned out in Richmond. There are so many voices from Northern Virginia and Tidewater and other parts of the state. We need to have experienced, strong leadership from this part of Virginia. And that's why I ran, and that's why I'm proud to represent this region in Richmond. And so the things that I care about are the things that the folks here in the 41st District care about. As I've gotten to represent this area, I've heard a lot from a lot of people. I've got to meet a lot of people from across the political spectrum and across the district. And the things we care about are making this region more affordable, making it more prosperous, making it safe, and making it free. And those are the things that I've focused on during my time in office during the last 2 years, and they're the things that I'll continue to focus on. If you re-elect me to this office, I'll continue to work on each of those things and try to make your life a little bit better.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next question, and we'll start that with, there we go, with Ms. Franklin. In just the last few months, political violence has claimed the lives of a famous Republican media personality and a Democratic state legislator in Minnesota, and gunfire continues to echo in the hallways of our schools practically every week. If elected, what will you do to protect citizens from senseless violence while also respecting your fellow citizens' Second Amendment rights?
Thank you for that question. I think I kind of stated this in the first question. The opening statement, political violence has no place in America and its politics. People should be able to openly disagree with each other and not have to face violence like we've seen just most recently last week and then earlier in the year. I think a lot of this depends on our leadership, and we have to be able to have these conversations and make sure that we're toning down the temperature and what we are talking about. So often both sides like to villainize the other side instead of talking about what we stand for, and that's what I focused my entirety of my campaign on, is making sure that I'm telling the folks of the 41st District what I'm going to fight for and not villainizing my opponent. And I think that that's the kind of leadership that we need to expect from leaders. On the issue of gun violence, I fully support the Second Amendment, but we also need to make sure that we are protecting our families, we're protecting our kids, and we're protecting our communities. And so I'm in support of common sense gun violence measure reforms like background checks and making sure that we're keeping dangerous weapons outside of the classrooms and making sure we're protecting our most vulnerable people in the communities.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Mr. Obenshain. Do you want me to repeat the question? It's kind of long.
That's all right. I think I got it, Jeff. But first and foremost, I think it's absolutely vital that we have these conversations. It's really important that we have a free exchange of ideas. That is the very basis of what this country was founded on, and fulfilling the founder's vision for this country depends on us having a free exchange of ideas. Unfortunately, there's been so many efforts to try to silence people with differing views, and we've seen that most recently this past week. It's extremely unfortunate. I do think that we need to think about going to the meat of your question. Okay, I'll go to the meat of your question. It's really a question about gun laws, and as a prosecutor, I've had the opportunity to prosecute the laws that we have here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We do have common sense gun laws in Virginia. We have dozens of laws about how you can obtain guns, the process for obtaining guns, where you can take them, when you can have them, all those types of things. My approach is that we need to focus on limiting gun violence by focusing on those individuals who misuse guns in the most violent ways. That's why I've introduced legislation in the General Assembly to increase penalties for repeat offenders of using a gun in a violent felony. Unfortunately, the Democrats didn't want to hear that bill. I introduced it 2 years in a row, and it wasn't heard. And so, what we need to do is continue to focus on those individuals, not take away the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens, but focus on those individuals who misuse firearms. And we also need to continue to focus in this Commonwealth on mental health, and that's what I've also done.
Thank you, and my apologies, my timer malfunctioned, but you each got 2 minutes there. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the next question for Ms. Franklin. This is from an audience member. This district includes Virginia Tech. What have you done to engage students in your campaign, and how will you work to promote their interest in the legislature?
When I launched this campaign, I've spent all semester engaging students, both this semester and last semester, talking to them where they're at, meeting them at their dorms or in their classrooms or in their extracurricular activities, hearing their stories. We've got a team of students that are helping support my campaign as well, and they've been very vocal about what they're concerned about. They're concerned about their future. They feel like folks are not really fighting for the issues that matter most to them. Right now, the average age to buy a first-time home buyer is 38. The kids that are 19 to 20, likely when they're in their 30s, that is going to increase in their 40s. we are setting up our kids to not have a successful future. And so one of the big things I want to make sure that we are pushing is for how are we going to make sure young people afford homes? How are we going to make sure they have access to good jobs, that they can grow after they leave their university, that they have internships, and that we're also protecting their rights. That has been huge for students across campus. They're very upset with some of the legislation where we were trying to pass around contraception and birth control access. They want to continue to have that access. And so I think for me, the biggest things is making sure that we have leadership that understands that the youth care just as much about the economy, as much about their rights as any other voter, and that we need to meet them where they're at and not expect them always to come to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Obenshain.
Yeah, I think obviously Virginia Tech is a huge part of this district. I think, first and foremost, we need to get this football program turned around immediately. But no, there's a lot of really important things that matter to students here at Virginia Tech. And I've had the opportunity to talk to so many and work with so many over my 2 years in the House of Delegates. I've co-sponsored legislation that prioritized putting sexual assault response kits closer to the university so that university students who are the victims of sexual crimes could have greater access to those type of resources. I've sponsored budget amendments supporting Virginia Tech while I've been in the legislature to make sure that they have the facilities that they need. I've sponsored budget amendments to support our Corps of Cadets, which is a great, very important part of Virginia Tech's identity. We need to continue to make sure that group continues to have a great presence here on campus. But I think the most important thing is something that really everybody wants, and it's jobs, opportunity, and prosperity. I've talked to a lot of folks who have graduated from Virginia Tech and wanted to stay here in the New River Valley, but they couldn't find a job. They couldn't find the right job for them that would keep them here. And that's why I think economic development and prosperity is such an important part of what we do in Richmond and in the General Assembly. We want to make sure that those students who do graduate from Tech and do want to stay here and contribute to our community can do that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And now we're going to move on to the next question. Ms. Franklin, this is to you. Also from an audience member, the Virginia Clean Economy Act of 2020 requires the two main regulated electric utilities in Virginia to eliminate fossil fuel generation by mid-century. With rising demand, do you support efforts to revisit VCEA 2020 and relax or eliminate the requirement to phase out fossil fuels?
Yes, I appreciate the question. So the Virginia Clean Economy Act, since its creation, I have been one of the most vocal opponents of the legislation. I think that we missed a large part of where we needed to protect ratepayers and making sure that as we build out this clean energy economy, that we were protecting people's pockets. And the reason why is because we need to make sure that people can still afford their electric bill. And so I think as we head to Richmond, this is going to be the biggest fight in 2026, is how are we going to build out our electric grid, because right now, with the data centers coming online, there's not enough power. And when you talk to the different power companies, they're not sure exactly what they're going to do, because oil, it takes 7 years to build and start a new program. The fastest right now way to get a new power company on the grid is to use solar. You can have those up in 18 months. And so when we head to Richmond, we're going to need to talk about how we are going to regulate these monopolies. That's one of the reasons why I'm the only candidate that isn't accepting money from Dominion and Appalachian Power, and that's key for me, is that if we're going to regulate and regulate these monopolies, we need to make sure that we aren't taking money from them. And so I will be making sure that when we go to Richmond that we are fighting for things that lower electric bills, like distributed solar, like making sure that when we're building out, we're not using prime farmlands, that we're using brownfields and industrial locations. And that is, I think that there was a lot of work to fix the Virginia Clean Economy, but most of that work got vetoed. And so I would like to make sure that we pass something, because it's what Virginians need, and that it doesn't get buried in the political, no other word but BS. So thank you.
Thank you for that. The same question to you, Mr. Obenshain.
Yeah, well, I just want to be really clear because when Ms. Franklin says that she opposes the VCEA, she's really misleading the voters because she has been very clear that she supports the goals of the VCEA. And the goals of the VCEA is a radical climate program that is supported by billionaires to try to force Virginia to use wind and solar power to meet its energy demands. It's impossible. It can't be done. And it has been recognized now that this is impossible. And so when she says that she opposes the VCEA, she doesn't really oppose the VCEA. She supports the goals of the VCEA. And it's the goals of the VCEA that are the problem. It can't be done without it taking on this huge cost. The costs of energy in Virginia in the last 5 years since the VCEA was passed have gone up 30%. And that's because it forces these demands on energy companies to use only wind and solar power and to exclude all other sources of electricity. That's why we've gotten to the point now where Virginia is the largest importer of energy from other states in the entire country. It's because of this type of legislation. And Ms. Franklin is supported and has been funded by radical climate activists like Jane Fonda's Climate PAC. It's true, look it up, because they want the type of legislation that will force energy companies only to use wind and solar power. It's impossible. We cannot meet the energy demands of Virginia using only wind and solar. It's just a foolish errand.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to flip it up a little bit, and this time we're going to lead off the questions with Mr. Obenshain and with Ms. Franklin getting the last word on the question. Okay, so the next question is also from an audience member. Do you support efforts to restrict placing new data centers in, do you support efforts to restrict placing data centers in Virginia? That is new data centers in Virginia. If not, would you support a multi-tiered pricing structure where retail customers do not have to pay for the power plant expansions? What, if anything, do you propose to slow down rate increases?
So there's a number of things that we can do to try to reduce those rate increases. First and foremost, I've been an advocate, again, for repealing the VCEA because it's really the VCEA that is driving those rate increases. If we continue to move in the direction more towards a California-style energy policy, we're going to end up with rates like they have in California. The current electric rates in California are more than double what they are in Virginia. So that's not the type of regulation that we need to keep rates low. And quite frankly, if we continue moving towards that, it will be impossible for that cost not to be passed on to the consumer. So what we need is an all-of-the-above energy approach that brings in new types of energy generation, including nuclear, small-scale nuclear, includes natural gas, includes all of these other things. There's fusion on the horizon. That's a possibility. So there's lots of different things that we can do to bring in to try to reduce those rates. As far as data centers, data centers are important. I don't think we should totally eliminate data centers from Virginia. I don't think that would be a smart thing to do. But we do need to ask that when these companies come in, they pay their fair share. They use a lot more energy than consumers do. And so these data centers, when they come in, I'm in favor of adjusting the formula so that these data centers are actually paying for the energy that they use. They do suck up a lot of energy, and so we need to make sure that they are paying their fair share.
Thank you very much. It's kind of a complex question. Do you want me to restate it?
Yeah.
Because I kind of fumbled it in the first place, and Chris did a good
Just
job
to
picking
make
it up.
sure I hit all the points.
Yeah, so do you support efforts to restrict placing new data centers in Virginia? If not, there's that dadgum timer again. If not, would you support a multi-tier pricing structure where retail customers do not have to pay for the power plant expansions? What, if anything, do you propose to slow down rate increases?
Yes. So for first off, as we look at data centers, I think that this should be something that localities are deciding for them. Whether we put a data center in Virginia or we put it in Pennsylvania, it's still going to affect our grid. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And so we need to make sure that we put the proper regulations and oversight. And I would be in support of making sure that these data centers are providing the energy. We have enough energy in Virginia for residential and commercial. We don't have enough energy for data centers and industrials, but yet they pay a lower rate than residential users. You know why? Because for too long, we have said that families are ATMs for electric monopolies because legislators are taking money from these electric power companies. And in order to stop that, we need to ban donations from public service corporations. And that's why we have high energy bills here in Virginia, not because of the VCEA. It's because we are overcharging our ratepayers because our legislators are owned by the power companies. And in order to change our rates, we have to ban that. And that's the only thing that's going to make sure rates go down in Virginia. And that we've seen power and electricity go up by 2 years. Only one of us has been in office for 2 years. And we've had a split legislature, Democrat control in the legislature and a governor that's Republican. And our power bills have still continued to go up. And the only common denominator here is that Dominion and Appalachian Power are funding candidates across Virginia. And so in order to bring energy prices down, we need to make sure that we are blocking that corrupt system.
Thank you very much for that. 1 second. Okay, we'll go back to Mr. Obenshain for this next question. Also from an audience member, our community, local, regional, and state, is seeing greater and greater divides growing among us across so many different demographics about so many different issues. If elected, what will you do to, 1, help bridge these gaps in an effort to promote healing and reconnection, or at least tolerance among our neighbors, and 2, reach across the aisle to help transcend the us versus them partisan perspective and achieve policy that is more moderate in nature and beneficial to everyone instead of fiercely right versus left?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. Obviously, it's something that's on a lot of folks' minds right now. But I think if you look at my record, you'll see that I've operated in a very bipartisan manner. A lot of the number of bills that I've introduced in the General Assembly have been picked up by Democrats and actually passed. Those are pieces of legislation that I introduced. Actually, Dwayne wrote about one of the bills that I introduced earlier this year to fix our laws around anti-Semitic threats against our Jewish neighbors. That was a bill that I introduced. It came actually from something that happened here at Virginia Tech. It was an idea that was brought to me, and I worked on it and introduced the bill. It was picked up by a Democrat in the House of Delegates, carried and passed into law. And so I also introduced a budget amendment this year that was introduced by a Democrat on the Senate side. To increase funding for co-response teams under the Marcus Alert system, which helps deal with mental health emergencies when law enforcement responds to mental health emergencies. So I've done a number of things in office that have worked across the aisle on issues that we can agree with and agree on. I think that's the prudent thing to do. But really, I think what's more important that we can do to bring people together is to rediscover our sense of civic engagement. I think that's something that we're really missing in our society. Getting off of our phones and getting out into our communities is something that's going to be really important for us moving forward. I think that's why I supported the governor's push to get cell phones out of classrooms. And we've seen actually really good benefits from that. Kids talking again, teachers talking about it being noisy in the lunchroom again. Those are good things, and that helps us as a country.
Thank you very much. Would you like me to reread that, or are you okay? Okay. Just a long question, so thank you.
That's okay. That's how the debates go, though.
That's
Just
right.
they're like, how 7 questions go. All right. This isn't something I've waited to do. I'm working on bringing people together. It's been the fundamental part of my campaign. It's the entire reason I am running for this seat. Right now, so many folks are seeking to divide us, but I want to bring people together. It's why when I go out and knock doors, I knock doors of people all across the political spectrum. And a lot of my Democratic colleagues, they look at me like I'm a little nuts on that. But I do. It's how we're going to bring people together is having these conversations. I have had people who voted for Donald Trump, people who are big supporters of Marjorie Taylor Greene, all tell me how they will be supporting me this election. And that's because we're able to talk about how we have shared community values, how one woman, she was really worried about her drinking and air, her drinking water and the air quality. And we were able to bond over how I've worked to do that. And so the way we bridge this divide is by coming together and having those conversations with everyone and not just picking and choosing on who we're talking to. And it's something it's very fundamental of who I am, is that we have these conversations, because whether or not we like it or not, we are all in the same ship, Democrat, Republican, Independent, and we need to keep this ship afloat. And I think the other big thing is the way we talk about legislation and the way the media and everything portrays that almost every piece of legislation that comes out of Richmond, and Chris can attest to this, is bipartisan or is almost universally passed by everyone. But the only things that are talked about are the pieces that are partisan in nature. And so when we talk about legislation, we do need to talk about a lot of the things that we're doing together, because most of it is together. And so if we start caring more about the ways we're working together and changing that conversation, that's how we're going to come out of this. I think that everybody, no matter your political affiliation right now, you are worried about what our future looks like as a nation. And the only way we can do that is by having new leaders who are ready to bring people together. Thank
you for that. This is going to be the second to last question, and we're going to start again with Mr. Obenshain. Sorry. Can you identify an issue where you'd vote differently from most others in your party?
Yeah, I can. You can look at my voting record and see that one of the issues that I was not afraid to stand up against the entire rest of my party was on a regulatory framework for cannabis, and that was something that I talked about in the campaign 2 years ago, and it's something that I have a lot of experience with as a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for 18 years, and you might think it's strange that I would vote in favor of a regulatory framework for adult cannabis sales. But I think it's really important that we have that framework because it is a public safety issue. Unfortunately, in 2020, 2021, when Lily Franklin was working in the General Assembly, Democrats rushed out a bill that legalized cannabis and put no framework in place for regulating it whatsoever. There was no taxation. There was no limitations on when, where, how. I mean, there was no enforcement mechanism, really, is what I'm trying to say. There's no enforcement mechanism. And that's what puts people in danger. When we have it being legal, but there's no regulatory framework, the possibility of something that we don't know what is in it, getting into somebody's hands, somebody dying because this has been adulterated in some way, it getting into the hands of kids, police not being able to enforce, the laws on the road because there aren't sufficient laws regulating the use of these substances. That's what really puts people in danger, and that's why I felt it was absolutely necessary for us to pass a regulatory framework to address, to make sure that these things are staying out of the hands of children, that these are adult sales, that our public safety is protected, that we have a revenue stream for addressing the mental health issues that come along with it, for addressing the public safety issues that come along with it, and the enforcement mechanism. That's why I supported that legislation, and I was the only Republican to support it 2 years ago.
Thank you very much. Ms. Franklin, same question.
Yes, and I will say on that piece of legislation, when I was in the General Assembly working, my boss was adamantly against it as well because of everything that he said. It was rushed and we didn't set up that framework. And I look forward to working with the legislature as we set up that framework to make that safe. I think the easiest one for me to say that my party is not a big fan of me for supporting is getting rid of the car tax. That has been one of the things that I have pushed against my party for a long time. You know, I think when we all decide to jump in and run for office, we come in with these set of ideas that we're like, this is what we need to do. Well, after knocking on, some 5,000 doors last cycle, I talked to voters all across this district, and that was one of their top priorities that they were upset about. Because at the end of the day, if you are struggling to make bills meet paycheck to paycheck, that is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so I pushed hard on it last time that it's time for us to come up with a new tax system. We haven't really updated Virginia's taxes since before I was born. I think it's time to look at it again. I'm 31. And so that was one of the biggest things that I pushed. It's very regressive in nature, and we have, this year we have a $2.1 billion surplus, and when I suggested it, we had a surplus then. So we have the funds in Virginia, and we can make sure that we do that in a responsible manner that keeps our localities whole and that our schools and our public safety still get funded. But that one is critical for me. And since I came out in support of it, we now have both gubernatorial candidates also in support of repealing it. And so I not only pushed my party to move further and worked with Abigail Spanberger and making sure that she was also for repealing the car tax as well.
Thank you very much. We're moving to our last portion, which is just going to be closing statements, and we'll start with Mr. Obenshain.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to start by, first of all, thanking the most important people in my life, which is my wife, Jennifer, and our 3 boys. I couldn't do all the jobs that I do as an attorney, as an Army Reserve officer, or as a delegate without their love and support. It's been the honor of my life to serve as the representative for the 41st House District. This is my home, as I said before, and I'm so grateful for all those who entrusted me with this important responsibility. I'm running for re-election because I'm proud of the work that I've done so far to put our region on the right track towards prosperity. Of course, there's so much more work to be done, and I'm excited about the possibilities that lie ahead and continuing my work to help make Southwest Virginia more prosperous, more affordable, and more free. What you've heard tonight from me is a record of success over the past 2 years. It's what happens when you put experienced leadership with common sense solutions. It leads to expansion of passenger rail back to the New River Valley for the first time in decades. It leads to money back in your pocket in the form of tax relief. It leads to job creation and prosperity. It leads to record investments in education and giving teachers the pay raises that they've earned. It leads to restoring common sense by removing cell phone distractions from our classrooms and protecting our kids in their locker rooms. And it leads to support for our first responders and our law enforcement officers who have the toughest job out there. 4 years ago, under Democrat leadership, Virginia had one of the largest overdose death rates in the country. That hit our region particularly hard. As an example of our success, in 4 years, Virginia now leads the nation in the decline of overdose deaths. That's the kind of progress that we want to see. Folks, I want you to know that I wake up every day and go to work for you, because I want this community to be the type of place where you can live out your dreams in one of the most beautiful places in our Commonwealth. As a dad, that's my dream for my kids, and I know so many of you share it. Whether you're a college student, a young family just getting started, or a retiree, you should know that your delegate understands the challenges you face and is working every day to meet them head on. Our region is continuing to grow, and we can't go back to the high tax, high cost, and high crime policies of the past. I'm asking for your vote, starting this Friday, to re-elect me to the House of Delegates so that we can continue to work together to make this community even stronger. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to go ahead and we'll have 2 minutes and a bit for Ms. Franklin.
All right. Thank you, Cardinal News, and thank you, audience members and my family, for being here and being with me through all of this. It's been, I couldn't do it without you all. For me, running for the seat means new leadership. It means somebody who's going to look at what we have currently and fight for the change that we need. We have been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and that's how we got here. Prices have increased 46% in the past 2 years, just here in Montgomery County. We have the highest unemployment rate in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now in the New River Valley. We have energy prices that have continued to skyrocket. But what I hear when I talk to people at the doors, when I talk to them in their homes and their back porches, is they're ready for somebody that is going to fight for them and make sure that someone is going to be addressing their needs. They're worried about what their future is going to look like, and that if we don't bring people together, it doesn't mean anything. Because at the end of the day, that is going to be so critical. We need to make sure that that the next leader that you elect is going to be fighting for our communities, that parents aren't having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, that they can tuck their kids in at night and go to their t-ball games on the weekends, that our seniors are able to not have to choose between their gas, groceries, or electric bills, that they can make sure that their prescription drug costs meet their needs, and that we can make sure that our kids have access to a world-class education system. Those are the things that we need to be looking for in our next leader, and that somebody that's going to fight for this region. I grew up here. 5 generations of my family is from here, from 2 all the way to 92, well, 93 next week, my grandpa, but so 2 to 92. And so when I look at policy, I think about how you can thrive at every stage of your life. I want to make sure that our kids, when they're young, that they can be kids and they don't have to worry about school shootings and they don't have to worry about growing up too fast. That when our young adults enter into whether they go into careers or go into college, that they have the tools that they need to build a life that they want, where they can buy a home and live in this community and retire, and then our seniors can be around their grandkids because their kids could settle here too. That is so important to me. And when you cast your vote, maybe early, starting next Friday, or this Friday, or later by November 4th, you will be casting a vote for something, and that something is a better future where we thrive at all stages of life. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much for that. I want to go ahead and pass the mic back to Jeff for any closing remarks at Cardinal News. Thank you very much for allowing our candidates to have this civil discussion. And I want to thank you for your tolerance of sometimes my fumbling pronunciation and stuff. But I think this has been very good. It's been very instructive for me.
I won't keep you any longer. We need to figure out how to make this timer work properly. But so happy to see you all out here filling this room tonight, and so grateful to both of the candidates for speaking openly and honestly, and for really fighting for their point of view, and to really communicate to you what they're about. So this is the best of politics, and I appreciate that Cardinal News is able to be part of it, and that you guys help us every day. Thanks so much.